Who's doing this? We, the people of the United States. I know you can't probably see my finger pointing to it, but we, the people of the United States, we need to talk about a problem we don't have, but should. I'm talking about a cohesive vision for national recovery. I don't want to bring you down by going through a current, accurate description of the damage that's been wrought by the Trump administration, but I will argue that the people can no longer wait for leadership to emerge from those who have remained silent or sometimes complicit during a clear authoritarian shift. Instead, we can begin drafting a vision for the future for the recovery for the US government post-Trump. And I think that might be coming sooner than scheduled. Regardless, despite the failures of our Congress during the first 90 days, we have also seen one of the greatest mobilizations of the American people in recent memory. And the hands-off, stand-up, and Tesla takedowns have been pretty impressive. I have enormous respect for the admittedly few senators and representatives who have stood against the dishonesty and greed of this administration, who spoke truth to power, who even risked their safety in order to bring attention to some of the most problematic abuses. We owe these leaders a lot. And I'm talking about, again, AOC and Bernie's Fight the Oligarchy tour. I'm talking about Senator Warren, who's one of the most qualified and effective bulwarks against this administration's abuse of the financial system. And I'm absolutely describing Cory Booker. Ultimately, that courage demands a response, but I don't think it's just gratitude. It needs to be strategy. Out of respect for that labor, I want to talk about vision today. Long-term strategic, people-powered, people-oriented vision. I'm Matt, I'm an attorney. I'm not your attorney, I'm just an attorney who loves you. But this is my channel, Walking Each Other Home, where we discuss legal and governmental concepts. And today, I think we need to have a vision check. So what is a vision? Well, at its core, it refers to a state in the future. So the description of that state is the vision, and when we reduce it to an artifact, that would be a vision statement. A vision for the future is useful in this context when it's aspirational, but not impossible, when it's aligned with our values, and when it can serve a few functional tactical utilities as well. Those would be identification, planning, and evaluation. Identification refers to the quality of a vision that you can see yourself in it. It relates to you. If you can understand how it relates to your world, you can identify with it better. Then the planning and evaluation side of this, these are kind of like two sides of the same coin. We're talking about planning within the vision, looking at the planning and saying, well, is the operation of what you're doing here within the vision? Are you stepping outside of it to try to get some better milestone in the future? Are you spending our civil rights on profits? That would be a place where the planning might need to be adjusted because the vision shows the planning's already stepping outside of what we're comfortable with. The evaluation side, on the other hand, is looking back. Did it work? Did we achieve something that was in our vision? Were the projects actually delivering within the vision? And that's the evaluation step. Let's talk about why a vision statement matters, though. It has a strategic value, and it relates, unfortunately, to the fact that we have turned into a two-party system in the United States. There's nothing that says there can't be more parties, and you may be able to identify more parties, but do you think they're influential? Well, this two-party scenario has lowered our expectations in the United States. Most Americans are stuck with a party that doesn't necessarily expose its policies. They may have very general ideas about what they're doing, but proving that they actually can do it is a very different question. And this means that we might find ourselves aligned with a party more based on personality or opposition to the other party, or a desire for, being in the group that we know, the one that we like. So this kind of a scenario is what I would describe as a weak ideological cohesion. Inside of these parties, the ideology is not as meaningful as the affiliation. And so the candidates may succeed less because of shared goals and more because we can all agree that that candidate is not the other guy. A vision statement could really help identify a party, but that's kind of risky for the parties. They thrive on vague affiliation. That's the easiest way to get membership. And that's exactly why we need a vision. To clarify who are the parties and what are they doing. This will cost them, because if you are looking at giant political parties like the ones we have, the extremes of them really have nothing to do with each other. For example, within the Republican Party, there is, in theory, some MAGA, and there is also some compassionate conservatives from the 70s and 80s when that was a much bigger trend. These two might not have any overlap. Everything about their worldview might be divergent, but they're both in the Republican Party and they both don't want to be Democrats. That's a problem. And the Republican Party does stand to lose at least one of them if they do a better job of presenting their policies. I would say the same is true for Democrats. This is not solely levied at any political party. They're all having a bit of an identity crisis, which is kind of their natural state in America. So now we're at the part of this video where I want to show you a really good example of a vision statement. And if you've ever tried to draft one yourself, you know what I mean, that this is harder than it sounds. So when I say I found a really good one, I've got a lot of respect for this vision statement. And it's going to come from the Constitution. We're actually just going to talk about the preamble, but I like to present the Constitution in this particular way because I think a lot of people don't realize it's very short. You should read it if you haven't. It's worth it. And specifically, we're going to start talking about the preamble, the why. The Constitution goes from this preamble, see right here in the middle of the screen, we the people. This is from the National Archives, by the way. But we the people goes right into Article 1, Section 1, all legislative powers, blah, 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 blah. This is the definition of the legislature. Article 1, the legislature. Article 2, the executive branch. Article 3, the judiciary. And when you are going right from a preamble into that, I'm just pointing out, there's no fat. There's nothing in between these. There's no more transition. We have a preamble, then we have the definition of the legislature. The preamble of the Constitution is perhaps easiest to read if we look at it this way. I have not changed any of the wording, but I have added bullets where a list was primarily done through commas and semicolons. So this kind of a presentation shows you a couple of things easier than just looking at it as a paragraph. The first is that who's doing this? We, the people of the United States. I know you can't probably see my finger pointing to it, but we, the people of the United States, are doing this. What are we doing? We're ordaining, I don't know if I can, we're ordaining and establishing this Constitution for the United States of America. And why are we doing it? That's the list in the middle of this. So this sentence is bloated by this list in the middle that has all of the reasons why the American people, represented by a bunch of rich white guys, we're going to ordain and establish this Constitution. And that list of reasons includes these 6. To form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Okay, I love this. If you just read this out loud to somebody who has forgotten it, they will call you a socialist. But ultimately, what you see here are a bunch of very human interests and that they were trying to vindicate. And also, this whole why section of the preamble, this value proposition, this vision statement, goes on in the Constitution to define all of the branches of the government. All 3, all of the branches. But some of them are more complex than others. The absolute most powerful is the legislature. But the executive branch, who's tasked with actually executing the laws of the legislature faithfully, they would be the second most powerful. And then the judiciary is hopefully not necessary. They resolve disputes in the interpretation of the law, and they also resolve questions against the highest law of the land, which is the Constitution. So if everything was running smoothly, there may not be too much involvement from the Supreme Court. But number 1, that's never going to happen. And number 2, I'm not sure we want it to. Running smoothly doesn't sound like the virtue of a country as interesting as the United States, in my opinion. Not one willing to constantly update itself and constantly innovate and constantly be introspective about whether or not they are achieving their own missions. We have a history like this. I would not say today is a shining moment in it, but this is a preamble that says what we should have hoped for from our government. I love that vision statement. Now, I'm not going to pretend that I ever did anywhere near that good. in my own attempts to add vision statements. But I did create a few, and I'd like to talk with you about them now. My first vision statement involves the messaging from the executive branch. The executive branch must visually and verbally represent its commitment to we the people in all of its agencies. Currently, I think you can imagine why I would have a great deal of dissatisfaction with the way the executive branches have been running themselves. They are not committing to any sort of support for the American people, and they are eroding it as rapidly as they can, largely in the name of profits for billionaires. Not acceptable to me. I want this kind of a vision statement to be foremost in our minds. Agency transparency is always a problem. This government likes to tout that it's very, very transparent. It's absolutely not, and it's also shrouded by falsehoods. But ultimately, they failed the transparency test in almost every way that they can without their own incompetence getting in the way. But that needs to be something that's a thing of the past. Ultimately, every federal agency must document and publish its transparency strategy. I would take this idea further, but this is the highlight. I didn't want to fill this screen with text, but I want to take this idea further too. I think it has to be incumbent on the cabinet members that oversee these agencies to actually fulfill this requirement. I want to be able to sue them directly when they fail it. And I would also suggest that there is a value in making them observe the strategy that the last agency had, meaning after an election, should the secretary and cabinet members all swap out, they should still have to operate the formerly approved strategy until they can approve a new one. So this means no scrubbing their websites without any oversight, no reductions in where the data is being held or where we find the information about how they operate, and they are obligated to continue to publish transparency materials as if under the last administration until they have changed the rules with a notice and comment period. This is directly in response to what I feel are the failures of FOIA, which is Freedom of Information Act. Look that up, it's a different video. But this is my second suggestion. And my final one would be that federal operations must be navigable. Now, before I get into this one, understand that I'm essentially taking the last two together. So the first one I talked about was executive branding and representations that they make, always holding people first. Let me put my hand on the screen. Always putting people first. Second is my second notion here was going to be the idea that there has to be strong transparency. So people first, strong transparency. Federal operations must be navigable. You could say by the people, but they must be navigable. That means agencies must develop a shared presentation model using real life archetypes. I need to be able to go in and say, I need to understand what the laws and regulations at the federal level that apply to me are. That means which ones bind me, which ones enable me, which ones have eligibility standards, or they have an influence over how other law will apply to me. And I should be able to do that by telling you, give me a compendium of materials related to these primary topics. I'm a veteran. I'm a disabled person. I have children. I have adopted children. I have a student loan. I have a history of addiction, and I am still recovering. There's an enormous number of things that we have laws specifically addressing, but because we have a sectoral law set, a sectoral means each sector has their own, we have to figure out all the ones that might apply to us, and the government doesn't necessarily do that for us. Sometimes they do. They occasionally have a reason why they want to make all of them more clear. But the idea is that it's incumbent on the individual to go figure all this out. The complexity of our government is extremely high. The idea that you are going to find all of the regulations that connect with you on a given topic is honestly absurd, especially in certain contexts. Let me give you one example quickly. Data protection is this is going to include data protection and data privacy. The idea of data security is nuanced. But when you have privacy requirements and confidentiality requirements and possibly obligations about how you protect the data, that can come at you from every single industry. That's what it means to have sectoral legislation. So we have a different standard for how healthcare information needs to be protected and private. We have a different standard for how financial information about people needs to be private. A different standard for how corporate information might need to be private. A different standard for how government information and war plans might need to be private. There's a variety of these, and you're going to have to go find all of the legislation that connects with these topics to find all the ways it might bind you. And that is, in my opinion, unreasonable. I think holding somebody accountable to this when it's a little bit unreasonable that they could have figured out it applied to them is one of the big problems that we might see in our government. In fact, some of the reasons we don't see as many protests is that I don't think a lot of people are aware of many parts of the law. I think we'd see more. And I would like to see more engagement. I would prefer it not be protests because I want to not have problems that need a protest to fix. But until that day comes, I want to see protests. Well, these are just a few of my ideas. I know they're imperfect. That's kind of the point. Let's reshape a future together that reflects our values, one that reflects our resilience and our demand for resilience from our government, one that reflects our refusal to abandon each other. We're worth it. This nation is worth it. It's complicated and scary, and it sometimes is embarrassing, but it has shone like a diamond many times in the past. And so today, I think that we need to engage thoughtfully and strategically. We need to keep our wits about us, and it's a great idea to talk to your neighbors and bring a friend because that's walking each other home.